welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 324 for the 4th of January 2015. 2015! Richard Saunders here with you from a very hot, oh goodness, hot and sticky, sweaty, humid, muggy, moist. Where's my thesaurus? That sort of weather. Wow! It is a warm one in Sydney, but our thoughts go to the people in Adelaide, especially in the Adelaide Hills, where there are dreadful fires raging, and sadly we hear of loss of property and lots of animals have been perished, unfortunately. I haven't heard of loss of life, but we'll hope for the best. But coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone to kick off 2015, Maynard. Maynard interviews Peter Hadfield, who is a really good journalist, and what I really love about his work is the videos he puts on YouTube under the handle Potholer54. If you're not subscribed on YouTube to Potholer54, I can really recommend it. Wonderful, I hate to use the word, or sometimes I don't hate to use the word, debunking videos. Well, sort of debunking, looking into the issues. Climate change he looks into, and creationism especially. Really interesting educational stuff. He also has the Golden Crocoduck Award for outrageous things like creationism and things like that. Find out more when Maynard interviews Peter Hadfield coming up to kick off the show. And once again this week, the Week in Science is taking a break from the Royal Institution of Australia. We are certainly looking forward to when Week in Science kicks off again. In the meantime, always visit riaus.org.au. They're a wonderful scientific outreach organisation, and they've even got their own channel, which is really interesting. What I mean by that is they call it Australia's Science Channel. Check it out there at riaus.org.au. And as it happens, they're in Adelaide too, but they're right in the centre of the city, so I think they're quite safe from the fires. And then it's Jo Alabaster. Evidence, please, with Jo Alabaster. Jo is going to be telling us about magnets, magnetic therapy, and especially concerning a book she bought. Science book. Yes, science, which advocates magnetic therapy. Yeah. And magnetic people. Magnetic people. You should see the picture Jo has posted with spoons and forks hanging off her body. Oh boy. You can. More about that when Jo Alabaster looks at magnets. Then to round off the show, a special little side report from Maynard, sort of continuing the theme of Maynard talking to the other side. Maynard visits a psychic fest a couple of years back now in Newcastle and speaks to psychic, with air quotation marks, Gary Wiseman. A little bit of an interesting insight. Short report to round off the show. Now, an important item appeared in today's Telegraph newspaper with the heading Ex-Hippies Jab at Woo Mythology by Jane Hansen. I won't read out the article today. You can find it online. I'll put some links. But our good friends at the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group, Heidi Robertson and Alison Gaylard, have, the story is really about them and how they've sort of set up the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group and so on and so on. And boy, have they been comping it online from the flying monkeys, the anti-vaxxers. It's interesting sort of look into psychology too, because a lot of people feel very strongly because these two are seen as traitors, quislings, and there's nothing worse than being branded a traitor to a cause or a movement or a way of thinking, being branded a heretic, one might say. It's psychology, it's human nature, it's really interesting. And of course, yes, the flying monkeys have come out and been very nasty, as they do, This is what these people are like. I think we're going to be hearing more about this on next week's episode of the Skeptic Zone. But just be aware that this is out there. There's a story appeared in the newspaper about the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group. And as an aside, what I did recently was I made a special copy of the Vaccination Chronicles DVD for the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group. It's sort of branded with their logo and their URL. And there's even a special introduction from me talking about that area of New South Wales and Northern Rivers. I sent them some copies, so I hope they will come in handy and help get the word around. And if you want a copy of the Vaccination Chronicles DVD, just visit www.skepticzone.tv. Scroll down on the left, you'll see the link. It's $12 anywhere in the world. I will burn you a copy, sign it, post it off. The artwork's on the DVD itself if you want to print artwork. And the idea is that then you are free to make as many copies and give them away as you wish. And all the people you give those copies to are free to make copies and give them away and give them away and make copies. Check it out at skepticzone.tv. Whew, it's still hot. Goodness me. Of course it's hot. I had to turn off the air conditioning to do the introduction. Blah. All right. Well, I run downstairs and, you know what I did. I went to eBay a few months ago. And I thought, what can I buy for summer? I found jumbo ice cube makers. Oh, what fun. I gave some to my nephews and nieces for Christmas, and I've got 2 in the fridge. Jumbo ice cubes. Wow, they're great. This is not an ad for jumbo ice cube makers, but if you want to buy one, they're on eBay. Well, I run downstairs and munch jumbo ice cubes. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Look, I better be pretty careful editing this because I've got Peter Hadfield here who's just been out there telling people that put people on the bum thing when they do the edit. Peter, what have you been out there telling us about journalists? Mind you, I'm not a journalist. I'm just some dill with a microphone.
That's the most dangerous thing, a dude with a microphone. I think basically to make people aware of the fact that television is a very passive medium. So we tend to watch an interview and it kind of flows over us. And at the end of you think you heard someone say something. And what I wanted to show were the editing techniques. And in capable hands, in honest hands, you have to edit. Out of an hour-long interview, you'll normally get maybe 5 minutes worth of good material, as opposed to this interview where you're just getting pure gold the whole time.
This is magic.
So you have to string these little bits of quotes together, and you can't normally do that on television without making it very obvious, because the videotape just won't allow for those kind of cuts without it showing up on the video.
Now, what about the old MTV-inspired white flash? That's always a good editing, yeah?
Yeah, well, there are honest ways of doing it, I guess, if you can make a transition from one part of a quote to another. So what they tend to do is they mask that edit by having what's called a cutaway. Now, the cutaway is, usually if it's a sit-down interview, it'll be a clip of the interviewer, which is interspersed to mask the audio edit. And these kinds of cutaways are so common we tend not to notice them. But what they're essentially doing is cutting down or shrinking or encapsulating the quote from the interviewee, which, if it's done honestly, is fine. The problem comes with dishonest and disreputable television programs, and I mentioned in my speech the conspiracy theory show on American television.
Well, now, you might be bad-mouthing conspiracy theory, but it has no way got the credit of Ancient Aliens. Ancient Aliens is my show. It's got Von Daniken on it.
I would love to see Ancient Aliens, see what they make of, let's say, of an interview with Richard Dawkins. That would be fascinating. They could get him to say just about anything. And you see, that's the thing. You can get someone to say just about anything, thing. And because it's on television, you believe it, because you're seeing the person actually saying it.
And what do you reckon is the most outrageous use of that you've seen of someone being misquoted using editing?
Well, I mentioned in my speech that I think the most dangerous thing at the moment is the assault on climate science, which is not just an assault on climate science, it's an assault on geology, glaciology, all the other sciences involved in climate change. And this is a concerted media campaign to discredit these things, and unfortunately they do it using these kinds of techniques. The one that I mentioned was where they got Ben Santo, who's quite a well-known figure, to make it look as though he was admitting to have deleted crucial information from an IPCC report, which he's denied doing, and yet on the conspiracy show they cut it and edit it in such a way that he seems to be admitting it. That is a very dangerous thing.
Of course, you've gone head-to-head with Lord Monkton a bit there, and him and I do share the whole bug-eyed thing going on there, but he's taken it to an extreme, obviously. There's something going on in the House of Lords water, I think. And how have you gone with him? Have you met him personally? Have you guys come to blows yet?
No, unfortunately not. He actually wrote something on What's Up With That, which is a very famous, I think the most famous climate denial. Actually, I don't like using the word denial. It's not a good... For me, it's not a good word to use.
It sort of paints it as like you're comparing it to the Holocaust, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look, what I say is you can't deny something in science. Okay, let me put this another way. Nothing in science is 100%. And therefore, to look at people who are critical of a scientific theory as deniers is like they're denying something that is an absolute fact that is undeniable. And I don't think science can ever say that. We can never say that we know 100% that something's true. That gets into the realms of religion. So I don't like using the word deny, but certainly he's one of these people who is a contrarian. And this What's Up With That website is probably the number one contrarian website. Now, Lord Monkton went on there and basically complained about my Monkton Bunkum series, which I made, which is basically pulling apart everything that he had said. Unfortunately, he made the mistake of not actually watching the videos, so he was attacking a straw man. But that was fantastic, because that gave me the opportunity to write to What's Up With That and say, well, you've had Lord Monkton on, do I have the right of reply? And very begrudgingly, they allowed the right of reply. So I then tore into Lord Monkton and completely discredited everything he was saying. And Lord Monkton very stupidly said, right, I will respond to this. Fantastic. And then What's Up With That started calling it a debate. So that, right, we have a debate. And then he never responded. I think he read it, he saw the videos, and he was so worried that he just decided not to respond. And we've been trying to get him to respond ever since.
And what is your best point against what Monkton's saying?
Oh, the most obvious ones, I suppose, would be the misquotes. He had a series of quotations from various people. And it's so easy. I mean, with facts, it's scientific facts is more difficult. You have to go to sources and you have to find it. But with a quote, either you're quoting something correctly or you're not. And if you go to the source of the quote and the way that Lord Monkton portrays the quote, and if they're completely different, then clearly he's manipulated and he's distorted. The other thing was there was a paper that he mentioned on Greenland. Johannesson, who's a very famous glaciologist, who had done something on the melting of the Greenland ice caps. And he had looked at the interior of Greenland and said that the interior is gaining ice. But in the paper he said, but of course on the coast it's ablating, it's melting. And in fact, the overall, if you look at the balance between the gain and the middle and the melting at the edge, there is a net melting. Now what Monkton did was, he said, so you have to follow this, Maynard. Yeah. What Monkton did was he took Johannesson's paper saying that there was a gain in ice in the interior of Greenland and said, therefore, Johannesson concludes that Greenland is gaining ice, which is not the conclusion of the paper at all.
Right, so it's selective quoting.
It's selective quoting, and this is basically what he does. He cherry picks and he distorts, and it's so easy. The great thing about Monkton, what I love about him, Mr. Monkton, as I call him, is that he gives his sources, which is fatal. If you're going to try and discredit science, never give your sources, because then all we can do is look it up and look at it and say, well, if you're quoting this paper, I'll tell you what the paper actually says.
Although most people who give sources, most people don't go bother looking. Just people like you, they've got a lot of time on their hands, obviously.
Yeah, that's right, and that's unfortunately the case. But the great thing is, but it is easy to debunk if you're a debunker and you want to go and check.
What if you want to go for simpler mistakes like the Food Babe has been doing recently, where she's just been making stuff up about the air on aeroplanes with no sources at all?
I don't know about that one.
Haven't you? Okay. She's saying, there's not 100% oxygen on a plane like there is at ground level, stuff like that. I would not like that. I mean, what if someone lights up?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things about creationists is that they will never give a source, except Hovind. Hovind's fantastic because not Eric Hovind, his dad, Ken Hovind, will always give sources for his things, and you can look at them. And my favourite one from Hovind is where he was talking about how the Big Bang Theory works, and it says it starts with a little bit of dirt and it swirls around, and then it condenses, and then hydrogen turns into helium. And I thought, no, he's not describing it. And I looked at his source, and his source was actually an exercise textbook from a school describing the birth of a star. And once you know that, you think, this is like shooting ducks in a barrel. It is so easy to knock these guys down.
And how easy is it to continually make the videos you do on your video channel? Because you're prolific.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of, well, actually my son is here today, and he's one of the reasons why I'm going back to work now, because he's old enough to fend for himself. And my daughter is now 21. And while I was at home and not working quite so much, and I had time on my hands to do these things, I've now gone back to work.
So you've basically driven your son out of the house. That's what you've done.
He's out. We've given him the keys to the car, locked the front door, and he can't get back in. Okay. That's the way to do it. You got to, it's like tearing off a Band-Aid, a clean break.
Was it a second-hand Mazda? What'd you get? That's not too bad. That's not too bad. But you could have done a bit better. Maybe if you'd
tell him that.
If you'd given him a better car, he would have gone earlier.
No, actually, he's still at home, but he can fend for himself, though, and that's the main thing. And I can go back to work happy, knowing that we put the kids through the system and they're old enough now to fend for themselves.
And what fires you up? What like, right, I've got to make a YouTube video right now. What normally makes you fired that?
There was one that came through the other. Someone sent me something. Now, I get so many people sending me things, and I really don't have time to look at everything, unfortunately. But this one I happened to click on because I had a few minutes to spare. And it was someone called the Two Preachers who was saying that there's a sign of the end times because they've noticed that just down the road from them there was a sinkhole. And they've noticed on YouTube a lot more sinkholes are showing up. And this is clearly, you never heard about these things happening a few years ago. Clearly this is Maynard's making a face, which is kind of like the face I made when like, what?
There's been many famous sinkholes in US harbours that they've had to shove mattresses into over the years.
Absolutely. And in fact, I went back and dug out from the scientific literature going back to 1868 the references to sinkholes, and they're not an unknown phenomenon. So the fact that these guys have only just woken up to it and they've just heard about it, and they admit, well, we've only just heard about these things, must be a sign of the end times. I thought, this is great. It's something that makes people really stupid, look stupid, I think is just great. I mean, if I can put an element of humour, I love to put humour into the videos that I do.
Well, I mean, obviously they're completely wrong. I mean, the work of Taylor Swift is a sign of the end times.
Yes, that's right. Clear. Well, she's a goddess. I mean,
she's the new Mozart.
But getting back to your question, so that's right. I've kind of like cut down on the videos I did, and I haven't made one now for 6 months. The last one that I did is the first one I've done in quite a while. It was called How to Argue with Arseholes.
And now, what's the name of your channel? How do we find it?
Okay, it's called Potholer54. Just put Potholer54 into the search engine in YouTube and you should find me.
And we should always have our critical thinking hats on whenever we're watching, reading or listening to any media, shouldn't we?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And especially if someone is saying something that is completely out of character, because the examples I gave in my speech today were scientists who were saying something that was completely different to what they have said before and since. And when you hear that, you think, well, hang on a minute, how did they get these guys to say that? And now you can look at the television technique, the cutaway technique that's used in order to make them say that. And I hope that'll make people a little bit more aware of how that's done.
What do you think of the house style that I've seen a few times? I mentioned the white flash that MTV first kind of started with. You've actually now seeing jump cuts on Discovery Channel and things like that. They're actually showing jump cuts. How do you feel about them being as honest as that?
It's more honest, I guess, than the cutaway. But the Hancock film that I referenced, so if people weren't watching my speech, this was the Quest for a Lost Civilization by Graham Hancock. It's about 20 years old, but it is on YouTube. And the one that I was looking at was the Yonaguni Monument in Japan. And throughout the dive, where these scientists are diving into the water, they are jumping from one quote to another quote, a frame here, a frame there, and they're getting little bits which they put together. But I think the thing is that even though there's no cutaway, they're making a coherent quote, or apparently a coherent quote. It can still be deceptive. There was actually a bit where Robert Schoch was coming out of the water, and he said he was gushing about this. Well, this looks incredible. And I said to him, now, just at that point, they seem to have cut the film. You went on to say something. And he did. He said he went on to say, but I don't think this is a man-made feature. They cut that. This is incredible. And then they go to Graham Hancock saying, what's more incredible is. And of course, the whole thing makes you think that these scientists are endorsing what Hancock says. And in fact, they didn't. They didn't endorse it at all.
And of course, you shouldn't be more suspicious of one source than another. You should be careful with all sources, shouldn't you? And not just like the right-wing leaning ones.
Oh God, yeah. I don't put politics into this at all. I mean, I find it rather insulting to think that conservatives have a monopoly on stupidity. I mean, I've actually been very critical in my videos of Al Jazeera, for example, that once did a story. I mean, I'm not pro-climate science or anti-climate science. That's not the point. The point is accuracy. And there was an Al Jazeera program where they had a reporter wading through the water of an island off the coast of Panama, saying, the fishermen here say the water used to be down at my ankles 20 years ago. Now it's up to my waist. This is a clear sign that sea levels are rising. And I thought, now, hang on a minute. That's like a meter. Where have sea levels been rising a meter? We're measuring them in terms of millimeters every year. So I checked where she had been, and it was an island off the coast of Panama, which is on a small crustal plate, very small one, and it's sinking. And clearly what's happening is it's not the sea levels rising, but the land is sinking. Ironically, she spoke to the very scientist who wrote a paper which talked about this, and for some reason she either didn't ask him the question or they didn't have it in the answer. That's the cause. This is not a sea level. So she had this gushing report on sea level rise and how awful it was due to climate change, and it's completely inaccurate. And I always say to people who are accepting the science on climate change, don't exaggerate it. Don't lie about it. Don't try and make it worse than it is, because if you do that, if you're caught out, then they're going to think the whole thing is discredited. So you have to be accurate in whatever you do.
Is there a website that tracks this kind of thing generally or not?
Look, my YouTube channel is the very best way to... I think I've done now 24, 25... it's up to 27 now, videos on climate science. And every single one is looking, apart from the ones that deal specifically with the science, there are about 3 videos which just look at the science, the evidence for climate change. All of the rest of them are basically looking at the myths that are going around the internet that people send me, or the ones that I find, and debunking them. The latest one is that, global warming stopped in 1998. There's another one that says scientists in the 1960s and 70s were predicting an ice age. And the other one I like is there's no correlation over the last 500 million years.
That was the one that got me, yes, because I remember, yes, in Time magazine they were predicting an ice age there, and they were not right at all. What went wrong there?
Well, what went wrong there is what went wrong with the media. You can't look at the media and say this is scientific stuff. It's in
Time magazine.
It's Time magazine, it must be true. Well, actually, Penn and Teller did something on this, and Penn said, it's in Time magazine, damn it, must be true. And of course, the trouble is that the media do get science hopelessly wrong. The last talk I did for the skeptics was on that very subject. It was on the really bad science reporting that's going on, because a lot of newspapers and magazines don't have science reporters. The Al Jazeera story, which I just mentioned, was actually their environment reporter. And you see, if you look at something from the point of view of the environment rather than science, you're usually getting someone who's doing a gushing human interest story in these poor people whose environment is being destroyed, rather than looking at the science of it and why is this happening and what's causing it. So, the media certainly were reporting an ice age in the 60s and 70s, but a survey that was done of the scientific papers at the time found the vast majority were expecting warming, and the reason that there was cooling at that time was because of the pollution. And there were new pollution laws came into the 70s, and in fact a couple of papers did actually point out, once these new pollution laws come into effect and aerosols are reduced, because aerosols of course do mask global warming, as they're doing now with all the aerosols produced by China, then we predict that warming is going to continue, and indeed it did. So the predictions of the scientists in the 50s and 60s were absolutely spot on. People get very hung up on what the media says, and I always have to warn them, whatever you see in a newspaper, check the source. If they quote a scientist, go to that scientist, find out what he's published, read the paper that he's published if you can, or at least the abstract, and see if it actually fits in with what the newspaper said, and make sure the newspaper is not cherry-picking, make sure the paper hasn't been withdrawn or has been commented on. There are various ways of reading the scientific literature. A great way, by the way, is to read reviews, because papers can either be studies on a specific thing, or you can write a paper which is reviewing the literature in a certain field. And that's a great way for science journalists like me to operate, is to look at the reviews first to get a handle on who's writing what and what the outcome is.
So you're saying wherever you're going, whatever you're reading, take your critical thinking with you.
Absolutely, yes. And I think we should be teaching critical thinking in schools a lot more than we do. I mean, it's great to be talking today to kindred spirits among the skeptics here. You're talking to an audience that gets it. And that was why, I really enjoy speaking here. But of course, the vast majority of people are not into that kind of thing, and they are happy to let the television wash over them and just accept whatever they think it's saying. It's very a passive way of thinking, and I think we need to create active ways of thinking.
And you can do that to yourself by going to Pothole 54, seeing what you've done there, exposing these techniques.
And that's all right. People always ask me, why is it Potholer? Well, Potholer used to be my nickname. When I worked in an office in London, the only time I've ever worked in an office.
What you were downstairs in a booth?
No, I like the IT crowd. No, I majored in geology, so everybody, when they heard I did geology, they thought this had something to do about crawling underground in rocks, so I got the nickname Potholer.
Okay, well, since Mr. Geologist, what's your favourite rock then?
Favourite rock? Dunite.
Yeah, I love. Why is that? What's special about that?
It's a beautiful colour. It's just lovely stuff, and it's formed deep under the earth, and it comes up this lovely sort of greenish colour. Now, having said that, I bet someone's going to read this and say, "Hang on a minute, I just looked that up on the internet. It's not green at all." Look, I'm going back a long way. I did my degree in the 70s, so a lot of rocks have changed since then. A lot of them have melted and reformed. So who knows? It might be a different colour now.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks very much indeed.
Ein großes Hallo an alle deutschen Zuhörer des Skeptic Zone Podcasts. Wusstet ihr, dass es auch in Deutschland einen Skeptikerverband gibt? Für weitere Informationen über uns und das Skeptiker Magazin besucht www.gwup.org. Ich wiederhole, www.gwup.org. Und unsere offiziellen Facebook, Twitter und Google Plus Seiten.
The Skeptic Zone is brought to you by Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. Visit drbobsquiz.wordpress.com and see if you can match wits with Dr. Bob.
What we want is some more evidence, please. Here's Jo Alabaster.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. Well, today I'm reporting from under a doona. There's a thunderstorm happening around me here in the Blue Mountains, and it doesn't seem to be letting up anytime soon. I'm not under here because I'm cold or afraid. I'm attempting some makeshift soundproofing. So, if you hear any thunder during this report, I do apologise and hope that it times itself for dramatic effect. Much to the delight of his unashamedly geeky parents, my son Oscar is rather enthusiastic about science. While at 5 years of age he's fairly certain that he's settled on a career in paleontology, he hasn't yet ruled out other sciences, so we're more than happy to give him access to microscopes, telescopes, do kitchen-based chemistry experiments and physics at bath time, alongside the occasional trip to hunt for fossils or visit a natural history museum. Our geeky parenting is an absolute joy. Indulging the kids' curiosity about the world around them, seeing what hypotheses they come up with to explain their experiences, suggesting ways that they can find out information. In addition to plenty of hands-on exploring and experimenting, we view YouTube videos, do image searches with Safe Search on, and look through books for information and ideas. So for Christmas, alongside Lego and Minecraft toys, Oscar received a few books. A couple of them science-related. One, Magnet Science, seemed rather nifty and engaging. It contained a selection of magnets, a mercifully sealed container of iron filings, and a series of experiments to perform, reminiscent of the sorts of projects I grew up with on the Curiosity Show. Make a fishing game, make a compass, construct an electromagnet under parental supervision, all with brief explanations of the science behind what was occurring. Fantastic. Until I spotted the last page, titled Facts and Feats. Quote, Magnet Medicine. Magnetic therapy is an alternative medicine practice using magnetic fields. No one knows for definite how it works, but supporters of the therapy believe it helps to restore health by improving circulation, as the magnets attract the iron in the blood, increasing the supply of oxygen to the source of the pain. Others say the magnets reduce the negative energy in the body. End quote. Oh boy. No one knows for definite how it works. Nobody has proven that it works, nor shown a mechanism by which it can work other than the placebo effect. The supporters of the therapy who believe that magnets attract the iron in the blood, they're wrong. Iron bound to hemoglobin is no longer ferromagnetic, which is a good thing, else we'd be hemorrhaging frequently as we walk around our homes, and we'd literally explode when undergoing an MRI scan. As for others saying that magnets reduce the negative energy in the body, you can't get much more meaningless than that. Negative energy is a vague concept supported by the anecdotal others say. As for others saying that magnets reduce the negative energy in the body, you can't get much more meaningless than that. Negative energy is a vague concept, and supported by the anecdotal others say, these are empty words. Why is this in my child's book on science? This is not scientific at all. The claim is pseudoscientific, and its presentation is incredibly uncritical. Furthermore, merely Googling magnet therapy returns several pages explaining that magnet therapy is a pseudoscience. I'm utterly dumbfounded as to how on earth an author who did so well designing and explaining experiments over the previous 47 pages of this book, and they managed to write about electromagnetism in a manner appropriate for children, could get it so very wrong on the last page. And it isn't as though there is a short supply of legitimate facts and feats relating to magnets. The second paragraph on the page is an excellent example. It discusses the speeds reached by a maglev train. Now that's fascinating. And it's real. The third paragraph, though, quote, Human magnet. Aurel Raileanu from Romania set the world record for being the strongest human magnet. Magnetic objects, including televisions, spoons and irons, stick to his skin. He doesn't know how he does it, but he says he focuses his mind and releases the feeling of magnetic attraction, which makes even the heaviest objects stick to him. End quote. Human magnets. Have you ever seen a child stick a spoon to their nose? It's a cute little parlour trick utilising the angle of the nose, the hairlessness and smoothness of the skin, and some moisture from breath or a little naturally occurring sebum to reduce friction, to make it appear that the spoon is stuck to the nose. People practising human magnetism, oftentimes claimed to be a mystical or mysterious power, are very likely using the same tricks as the child with a spoon on their nose to balance objects on their faces and bodies. Objects, always with a smooth surface, are often placed against the upper chest, upper arms, upper back, at the top of a slightly protruding belly, or on the face, all body surfaces which are not quite perpendicular to the ground. Human magnets tend to have hairless, smooth skin, which, combined with everyday skin secretions, create a surface which is non-slippery. Skin elasticity also plays a part. Our skin tends to conform somewhat to surfaces against which it is pressed, particularly when force is applied. Now, out of vanity, I'm hesitant to describe the ideal skin for human magnetism tricks as being oily, but I do seem to be able to attach more pieces of cutlery to myself when I haven't showered for a few hours. And if you want to see a photo of my efforts, there's one on my blog at evidenceplease.net. There are some simple tests to check whether magnetism, rather than balance, smoothness and skin secretions, is causing objects to apparently stick to somebody who claims to be a human magnet. Suggested by our friend James Randi, a sprinkling of talcum powder over the skin. This reduces the friction and stickiness of the skin, generally causing items to slip. Benjamin Radford suggests a light coat of oil. Thin clothing or a thin layer of plastic should also show that magnetism isn't the cause of the object sticking, as surely a magnetic force ought to be able to penetrate these materials. No human magnet has ever been tested and shown to emit a magnetic field, which has produced significant readings from a Gauss meter. Nor is the more simple test, involving holding a compass near a human magnet, shown evidence of a magnetic field. Given that some human magnets claim also to be able to attract glass and ceramic objects, with smooth surfaces unsurprisingly, it is possible that the claimed magnetism is some force of attraction other than the magnetism we're familiar with. In which case, magnetism is a term rendered as vague as the word energy used in similar circumstances, and the story of Aurel Ralanu has even less reason to appear in the magnet science book. And yet, despite how simple it is to debunk their claims, human magnets still make the news every few years. A boy covered in spoons, a woman with coins stuck to her face, and Aurel Ralanu, purported world record holder with his irons and his television. I can only guess that the media who report on human magnets feel that a fantastic sounding story is more interesting than the simple trick that's being performed. And they may well be right. I'm quite a fan of parlour tricks, stage magic and illusions. They're a fun way to encourage critical thought. I love the combination of awe, delight, laughs and wonder that they can evoke. If I don't know how a trick is performed, I have a rather enjoyable puzzle to try and work out. And when I do, I can enjoy the skill of the performer, being it their sleight of hand, their take on presentation, or whatever twist they've put on an old trick to make it their own. What I don't enjoy, however, is when a trick is presented as the truth. I like my liars to be honest. It's especially galling when the trick is presented as truth in a kid's book purporting to be educational and scientific, something which ought to be a trusted source. As for telling kids that magnetic therapy is anything but pseudoscience, I can only hope that people who buy sciencey books for children also have an inclination to introduce them to and encourage critical thought and skepticism. If you're interested in my writing, it can be found on my blog at evidenceplease.net. And I've just made a Facebook page for my blog and this segment. Would you like to test your psychic powers and guess what it's called? That's correct, it is the Wangaratta Turnip Society. No, just do a Facebook search for Evidence Please and you'll find it. Thank you.
The Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics.
Have you ever wondered if there's something on the other side? Have you wondered if there's just more to your existence than having Vegemite on toast in the morning? Well, we're certainly at the right place here, the Newcastle Psychic Expo. We're going to talk to the convener of the expo, Gary Wiseman, and perhaps I'm going to learn more about life, love, and really nice-smelling incense. Oh, and some calming music too. I feel better already. Gary, you have a circuit of psychic expos around New South Wales, don't you?
That's right. We go throughout, Queensland, Victoria and Tasmania as well, and even New Zealand.
What are most people seeking when they come to a psychic expo? Because I expected to see a lot of stalls with crystals, and there is a little bit of that, but it's mainly psychics doing readings. How many have you got here today?
Well, there are 14 today, and there'll be another 6 at the weekend. Essentially a travelling psychic reading service with the very best readers from all over Australia.
And how do you rate them? I mean, how do you qualify them to be here? Do they have to go through a test? Do you have to give them 10 things you're thinking of, or pick a number from 1 to 10? How do you rate them?
It's a fairly subjective thing on my part. It just falls on my experience and intuition about who the best readers are, and get a feeling from talking to people, and then we give them a trial. That trial usually involves 3 readings, and if the response is good, come on the circuit with us. But they have to earn their stripes because our reputation depends on it.
Do they get to do best of 5 if they can't get 3? Is there a lawyers or a doctors? Is there a psychic association, like a bar of psychics you can get booted out with if you're not a good one, or is there a guild?
Psychics tend to be rugged individuals who do their own thing. They often don't know much about what other people are doing. Maybe
it's exactly the same in radio. We're a bit like that in radio too. I've got no idea what's going on. A lot of people reckon it's just cold reading, like reading the person's face when you're talking to them. How much do you think is cold reading, and how much is being able to delve into their aura or whatever they're getting this information from?
We may unconsciously pick up things about the in the face and the response of it, but we certainly can't rely on that. You just couldn't rely on that even if you consciously did. For instance, yesterday in a reading I did for someone during our lecture, I got them to pick a card just to demonstrate, and I said they feel like you're going to do modelling in France and Italy, and she said she was flying out to Paris tomorrow. Now, you couldn't possibly get that. That's one of the better ones that I've picked up.
Obviously not legally binding, but do you ever get people complaining about the reading, like it wasn't the one they wanted or it was incorrect?
It sometimes happens because what we're doing is not an easy thing. It's very difficult tuning into things that you can't see in front of you, and occasionally the chemistry is not right between the customer and the client. We either offer a reading with another reader, and if they're always happy the second time around, but if they weren't, we'd offer a complete refund. And
you've got, is it 18 psychics here, is it?
14 today, and
they're all busy.
Actually, we do have 2 coming in later today, so you must have picked that up, I think, Maynard.
Everybody told me to ask you, how come you didn't know I was going to ring, and something like that. Do you get people asking you, smarty bums on the phone going, I don't need to tell you who it is, you must know?
I always say if I had $1 for every person that's made a joke based on you should have known, I'd be a millionaire.
Well, how do people react when you normally tell them you're a psychic? Because I get a bit scared, because I think you might see the real me inside, and I work very hard to not let people see that.
When I'm away from work, the last thing I want to do is be trying to delve into people's minds.
And how do you do it? Some people use tea leaves, some people use an object from the person's life and hold it, some people even stare into a globe. How do you do it?
2 tools that suit me are tarot, or actually now I use more animal cards, which is a type of tarot, and also astrology. They're the 2 that suit me, whereas someone else identifies more with the patterns on the hand, so they'd be drawn to palmistry, and either tarot or animal cards. I've created my own set of animal cards where you can read animals and read it the way you would a tarot card.
Can you get a rhesus monkey card?
We do have the monkey, and the monkey represents more playful energy or a bit tricky or whatever, but
what one don't you want? What card don't you want to see come out of the animal pack?
The thing with the animal cards is that all of them are pretty equal, but you might, since we don't like reptiles usually, the snake probably is something you don't particularly want to see, but it's got its good and bad side just like any other card.
The one that always worries everybody in tarot must be the death card. No one wants to see the death card, particularly the death card and the emperor card together, upside down. Not a good one.
Thing is that
to the layman, that would seem very scary.
Well, it does, and that's one reason I've moved away from tarot to animal cards, because animals are less threatening.
Could you try maybe top shelf alcohol cards? Like you could have a Stolly vodka, a Bailey's, a coffee liqueur. That would make people feel even more at ease.
I think if you're an alcoholic, that would be a wonderful tool for you to use. You'd really identify with it.
Are you picking up anything on me at all from meeting me this morning for the first time?
I only tune into people when they ask me to, and I don't intrude on people's space.
What about missing people? I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell me where Greg Evans is now, would you? Richard Moorcroft? Delvine Delaney? All these people just disappeared.
Yes, they're probably up near Byron Bay somewhere enjoying the good life.
We're talking to Gary Wiseman, who's the convener, organiser of the Psychic Expo, which tours Australia. And what's your favourite greeting? I like to say live long and prosper. What's your favourite?
Yes, I'll have to think about it. I like being a Star Trekkie fan, I like the prosper one.
And also musically, you've got some very calming music there. Is that very special? I mean, I myself, I'd like some sort of pumping dance music going if I was actually having my reading done, like something I'm Too Sexy, like Right Said Fred.
I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts.
I'm beginning to wonder about you, mate.
You're not the only one.
All the alcohol and the alcohol readings and the pumping music, I think, nice.
I'm here in the foyer with a lady who's just had a reading. How long was your reading for?
25 minutes.
And how did it go? I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but how do you think it went?
Interesting. Some things I found very spot on and some things were enlightening. Might not like what they said, but it was enlightening.
And how did they do it? Was there an object of jewellery they held, or did they have a laying on of hands? How did it work?
Read my palms first and then did my aura.
So as a percentage, how right do you think they were?
About 60 to 70, yes.
Did you hear anything you didn't want to hear?
Definitely.
Okay. So is that going to be something where you might have to change your life, or you're going to go, nah, that's just wrong?
Probably change my attitude and accept more than anything. Yeah.
And why did you come here in the first place?
To get some answers to some things.
What sort of mood will you take away from here, leaving here? Do you feel enlightened, empowered, or do you go,
Bit of both.
Thank you very much for your time. Live long and prosper.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Kenny.
Oh, hi, Tom.
Nice day at this park, yeah?
Yes, great weather.
Oh, look, a unicorn.
Unicorn? There are no such things as unicorns, silly.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't.
Hey, guys, what are you arguing about?
Tom thinks unicorns are real.
They so are.
Let's look this up in the Skeptic's Dictionary.
The what?
How can we do this in this park? There is no computer here.
You guys probably don't know about the Skeptic's Dictionary app. Available now for iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch in the App Store.
Wow, cool.
The app lets you access all of the great Skeptic's Dictionary articles when you're on the go. Here, let me look up unicorns.
Oh, cool. Kenny, prepare to be proven wrong.
It says here, the unicorn is a creature from fables.
Aha!
Actually, I see now that someone just dumped their ice cream cone on that horse's head. Thanks, Skeptic's Dictionary iPhone app.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Here we go, folks. Another year of the Skeptic Zone. What lies ahead? Well, I can't see into the future. That's good because nobody else can either. What lies ahead? We'll find out as it happens. You and I together throughout the year with our reporters too. Look forward to more Maynard, more Jo Alabaster, our other reporters too, when they can. They get very busy, and I understand that. But rest assured, we're in for an interesting year, as we are every year, I think. Still hot. I think Fred the cat is actually lying somewhere. He's probably in the bathtub, because that's a cool place for him to lie. It is really a hot, sticky day in Sydney. In about 3 weeks or so, I'll be heading to California for a little break to see friends and family. The show will keep going. I wonder who I can interview in California. I might catch up with Jeannie Scott. She's retired now, but heavens above, she's a wonderful lady and worth chatting to. I'll see what I can do about that. But for this week, hoping for a cool change. I hope there's a cool change on the way. This is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.